So the Nintendo Switch 2 is coming out, and the word on the streets is that Nintendo is absolutely going to slay with this launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. However, something has now come to light because the community on the Video Game Fight Tool channel is very astute in their observations. I was making a video yesterday where somebody was talking about how Xbox is more than likely looking at its console sales and is going to quit. They're going to literally walk away because they're putting their games everywhere and their console sales are doing very bad, even at 30 million. And, this is the end for them because they're going to look and say, why do we need to bother making, freaking Xboxes? What's funny is a lot of the people that say these things don't look at Xbox's overall business, will not touch the numbers, but they're going to be very, very, very bold in the way that they actually point out their conclusions. When you tell them and say, that Game Pass is making almost, if my calculations are correct, from statements that have been made from Activision themselves, from numbers that we've seen from economic councils, that Game Pass is bringing in at least close to $4 billion at this point from a conservative standpoint. And analysts are actually pushing a $5 billion mark. I'm not going that far. I mean, that's insane. If they're doing $5 billion on Game Pass a year, that is just ridiculous, okay? Let's not even do that. That's just setting up yourself for all kinds of false, hope. If you like that kind of thing, stay on the conservative side because the number that we've seen was about $3 billion. And when we go ahead and recalculate from Sarah Bond's comment, we'll see that number is actually closer to $4, if not a little more than $4 billion because of the way, both Game Pass tiers on console actually work. And then looking at their statements where they claimed that the sub counts on PC increased by 30% Q1 this year and subscription spending increased by 40% Q2 this year. So that already kind of gives you a little directive as to the trajectory of Game Pass. So when somebody says Game Pass has stagnated, you know that they're just talking nonsense, right? Good. Now, when I look at this particular, notion of Nintendo, and I'm going to get back to, I'm going to drive this home to where it is I'm trying to get to, please bear with me, is that some of my audience members are starting to ask me about hardware sales that are actually not necessarily that impactful, but still provide some means and value to the companies. I'll start with Microsoft, and I'm going to hit Nintendo here in a bit, okay? Like I said. Just give me a second. Mr. BDB5670, shout out to you. Friend of the channel, supporter of the content and all, says, I also ask why Microsoft still makes Windows Surface hardware when sales/revenue are down while Office 365 and Azure are seeing increases in revenue. Well, that's because they pretty much are believers in the fact that this particular hardware piece has some kind of a market. It may not sell the most in terms of laptop hardware. I think one of the leaders in that area is Lenovo, who sells like crazy. Dell is also a leader. HP is a leader. But they also understand that even though they may be licensing their software for these companies, there's a place for their own Surface devices. But the Surface, in my opinion, actually doesn't even drive the force of the next thing that I got to see. And some of you pointed it out to me in the comment section. Shout out to you guys. I found out that the Wii U sold only 15 million units. What? The Wii U sold only 15 million units. And yet, everyone is advertising now that this particular Switch 2 is going to do 15 million at launch. So Nintendo didn't give up on console when they sold half of what Xbox had sold the last time we heard about Xbox's console sales number. But somewhere, somehow, we believe that Xbox is going to abandon their hardware. I have to say, it's either people, right, are fomenting this stuff about Xbox leaving the hardware business, or they have no comprehension that Nintendo basically kept it going and kept it pushing even when they didn't have a lot of hardware sales, and their business is actually way more dependent on hardware than anybody else in the industry at this current moment. Xbox, on the other hand, everybody knows this. This is a quiz that anybody can pass. Xbox, number one, has found a way to make up for the loss in terms of their console sales by, number one, actually supporting the Xbox, One consoles, which those consoles still work. Number two, supporting freaking browsers to play their games via cloud, supporting their games on PC, which is a big market and a big install base, and also putting their games on PlayStation. If this reality is not here for a lot of people to pretty much go ahead and see as to how this basically negates, or I guess I would say shields them from the excessive risk that the industry right now can face, and they can still stay viable, providing a console base at the end of the day, then I think a lot of people are being purposefully obtuse about what the information is actually telling us. Their conclusions are not based in reality. It's not. Because as much as PlayStation may sell consoles, what's the point if they sell consoles and gamers are not happy with their ecosystem? What's the point? 77 million consoles sold. Like this person said, friend, I play on PC and PlayStation, but the Game Pass is stuck at 34 million subscriptions. Remember, I just told you, you're going to see comments like this. And Xbox and Series S and X are at 30 million. The service is a failure if you don't sell consoles too. The truth is PlayStation is set at 77 million units. Okay? But PlayStation users, the ones here on subreddit and the ones that are buying their Xboxes, anecdotal evidences, and the fact that their console basically had an 8% year-on-year hardware, increase, they say otherwise. So for you to say that it's actually stuck at 30 million units, what happened to the 8%? Nobody follows Xbox's metrics, but everybody is very, 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 on the money with PlayStation's 77 million units that they've actually shipped. See, you do know that there's a likelihood that anybody with an Xbox is actually playing these Xbox games because they actually can for a smaller fee compared to anybody with a PlayStation, because PlayStation games and PlayStation's ecosystem is more expensive. In fact, some are on this subreddit talking about how they've kept their PlayStation consoles aside this year because there's nothing for them to play, while Game Pass has a number of games and has them as different affordable, prices depending on your wallet. I'm simply of the mind that this is just some kind of I don't know what it is. Perhaps a lack of understanding of how their, the ecosystems work. Perhaps maybe a lot of people have not been really informed. I'm not really certain, what all we can say is going on here. Because at the end of the day, when you actually think about it, it's a very interesting, it's a very interesting set of paradigms that we're looking at, where something could be happening and people could be making conclusions or actually making claims that is in a different reality. Or maybe they might just be late to arrive at those conclusions, that we've been, privy to. And it's not like it's secret knowledge. This stuff is like public everywhere. And it's just fascinating to me. I think it is. Thanks for watching the video. Peace out.